Picture a Christmas morning lit only by open flame, or a stocking that actually held a lump of coal instead of a joke gift. Below are 10 holiday customs that have quietly disappeared from American homes.
The aluminum tree. This was space-age design brought into the living room, thriving briefly between 1959 and the mid-1960s. Made mostly by an aluminum specialty firm under the Evergleam label, these trees never pretended to look natural. A wooden center pole held rows of drilled holes stuffed with foil-wrapped branches. Because metal conducts electricity, stringing lights on them risked a short. So instead, a rotating color wheel sat on the floor and threw shifting bands of red, blue, green, and gold across the shiny foil. Marketers pitched them as sleek, needle-free, and modern. Pop culture ended the fad just as fast as it started. The 1965 special A Charlie Brown Christmas poked fun at aluminum trees as symbols of commercial excess, and sales cratered almost immediately. By the late 60s, families had gone back to real pine or lifelike synthetic trees.
Chestnuts actually roasting on an open fire. That line from the classic carol is familiar to nearly everyone, yet almost no living American has done it. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the American chestnut made up roughly 1 in 4 hardwood trees across the eastern United States. Street sellers in cities such as New York and Philadelphia hawked bags of warm roasted chestnuts for pocket change, a sweet and abundant winter food. What ended the custom wasn't shifting taste, but disaster. A blight fungus arrived in 1904, likely riding in on imported nursery stock, and over the next 4 decades it wiped out an estimated 4 billion American chestnut trees, pushing the species to near extinction. Imported chestnuts from Italy or China still exist, but the neighborhood chestnut cart disappeared along with the native trees.
The Sears Holiday Catalog. For generations stretching from the Depression era into the 1980s, this was essentially scripture for American kids. Launched under its Wish Book name in 1933, the hefty mail-order catalog landed in mailboxes each late summer or early fall, unofficially kicking off months of wishing. For rural and suburban children without a nearby toy store, it was often their entire view into what gifts existed. Kids would sprawl on the floor for hours, bending page corners and circling wanted items, G.I. Joe figures, Barbies, toy trains, in red pen to tip off parents and Santa alike. At its biggest, the catalog stretched past 600 pages. Big box chains like Toys R Us in the 80s, followed by online shopping in the 90s, made the printed version pointless, and Sears shut down the Wish Book for good in 1993. Meat-filled mincemeat pie. The Victorian-era dessert was a hearty, savory dish that would surprise modern taste buds. Today, mince pie usually just means a spiced fruit pie loaded with raisins, apples, and candied peel. But for most of American history, the name meant exactly what it said. Borrowing from English food preservation techniques, the classic American version combined finely minced beef, venison, or ox tongue with suet or hard fat, dried fruit, and generous splashes of rum or brandy, a method for keeping meat edible through winter. All through the 1800s, no Christmas dinner felt complete without this rich, meat-based dish. Once refrigeration made fresh meat available year-round in the 20th century, the preservation trick became unnecessary. Bakers gradually swapped in more fruit and less meat until the beef disappeared altogether, leaving only the name and a puzzling hint of its meaty origins. A genuine lump of coal. This was once a real and credible threat, not a punchline, throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now it's a novelty item, often chocolate or blackened gum, sold as a joke. Back when coal furnaces heated most homes, a chunk of anthracite sat within easy reach in nearly every cellar. Victorian folklore cast Santa, or his sterner counterparts, as a stern moral judge.
For Depression-era kids, finding coal instead of an orange, a coin, or a small toy in their stocking was a genuine blow, proof they'd been forgotten or punished. As homes switched to oil, gas, and electric heat after World War II, most suburban basements no longer held a coal bin at all, and the threat slowly turned from a real object into just a figure of speech.
Lead tinsel icicles. This glimmering strand decoration lit up American trees from the 1920s through the 1960s. Unlike today's puffy plastic garland, old-school tinsel was made from thin lead foil strips. Its weight let it hang perfectly straight, mimicking real icicles in a way plastic can't match, and it never tarnished, keeping its shine year after year. Families would carefully hang it strand by strand for an even drape. The catch? It was quietly poisonous. Once lead poisoning risks became widely known, regulators stepped in. In August 1971, the FDA warned that lead tinsel posed an unnecessary hazard to children who might handle it and then touch their mouths. By Christmas 1972, the heavy lead version had disappeared from shelves, replaced by lightweight, static-clingy mylar plastic that was safer, but never looked quite the same. Actual candles on the tree. Real flame was the standard and dangerous way to light a Christmas tree until the 1920s. Before electricity and affordable string lights, like those pioneered by companies like General Electric, took over, families balanced small wax candles at the ends of branches. The glow was often called magical, soft and flickering in a way LEDs still can't fully copy, but the risk was serious. Households commonly kept a bucket of water or sand with a sponge-tipped stick right beside the tree, just to smother any flare-up. Because of the fire danger, the tree usually stayed lit only 15 to 20 minutes at a stretch, typically just for unveiling gifts on Christmas Eve. The custom started fading after President Grover Cleveland showed off the first electrically lit White House tree in 1895, though affordable, safe electric lighting didn't really arrive until Albert Sadaka founded the Noma Electric Corporation in the 1920s.
Window shopping downtown. Strolling by department store windows was a top holiday pastime from the 1880s clear through the 1980s. Before suburban malls and online shopping took over, the city center was where Christmas commerce happened. Retail giants like Macy's in New York, Marshall Field's in Chicago, and Wanamaker's in Philadelphia spent months building elaborate window scenes. Not just dressed mannequins, but intricate animated tableaus acting out stories like A Christmas Carol or 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. Families dressed up and made a special trip downtown just to walk the windows, noses pressed to the glass to watch the moving figures and tiny worlds inside. A handful of flagship stores still try this today, but the decline of downtown shopping districts and the rise of online retail have mostly ended window displays as a family holiday outing.
Oyster stew on Christmas Eve. This dish has largely slipped out of mainstream American memory. It traces back to Irish immigrants escaping the potato famine in the mid-1800s. Catholic tradition barred meat on Christmas Eve, and while langfish had served that purpose back home, oysters became the closest substitute available in America. The custom spread widely through the Midwest thanks to expanding railroads. In the era before dependable refrigeration, December was the only month cold enough to ship raw East Coast oysters safely inland, packed in wet straw and ice. By the 1880s and 90s, a warm bowl of creamy oyster stew had become a holiday staple, even in landlocked places like Iowa and Illinois. As refrigeration improved and religious food restrictions eased, the dish stopped being essential, though it still lingers as a comfort food for some older families.
Popcorn and cranberry garland. This was the go-to Victorian and early 20th century tree decoration in America. While European trees leaned toward nuts and wafers, Americans, especially in rural areas, turned to homegrown crops for cheap, festive trim. Stringing popcorn was a slow evening ritual in the run-up to Christmas. The kernels needed to be a bit stale so they wouldn't shatter under the needle, and cranberries added deep red flashes against the green boughs. Some households even dyed the popcorn for multicolored strands. The tradition faded in the 1950s and 60s once cheap plastic garland and tinsel arrived, offering the same look with none of the labor and no risk of rotting. A few families still string popcorn as a fun craft, but it's no longer how most trees get decorated.
Which of these old traditions would you want to see make a comeback? Share your pick in the comments.